Okay guys, here is part one of my build and dyno test of an L78 375 horse 396, and I'm going to show you all the problems and what went wrong. Hello everybody, I'm Richard Holder, and guess where I am? That's right, Westech Performance, and that can only mean one thing. It's time to dyno test once again. And what's on the dyno today? How about an L78 375 horse 396 reproduction motor? That's right, I've put one together just to find out, what do these old motors really do? This thing has been sitting in my garage for like a year and a half, and I decided, you know what? Now it's time to get this thing together and get it up on the dyno. So follow along as I do all the assembly on this thing. I'm going to show you all the problems. We're going to get it up on the dyno. We're going to make some noise and find out, what do these old motors really make? This L78 375 horse 396 project started off with a 1967 396 block with all the machine work on the block and heads performed by James Bostic over at Bostic Racing Engines. We started off with a little bit of paint on the 291 heads, then applied a lot of spray paint to the block and pan and front cover. Nothing looks better than a nice fresh coat of Chevy orange. What do you think, Milo? Using the block plug kit, we sealed up all of the water and oil passages on the 1967 big block. Before assembly, we obviously had to gap the rings so we could install the pistons. Good things are happening when we use this baby. Okay, got the block all prepped, ready to set the bearings in, and drop the crank on. Okay, we've set the bearings in. Notice all the ones in the block have the oiling holes. Got a thrust bearing here in the rear. This compares to the other set of bearings for the main caps. No oil holes. Yeah. With the crank in place, I was able to install the 4-bolt main caps, tighten and torque them to spec. Now it's time to install each of the piston and rod assemblies using the Total Seal ring compressor. The L2242 pistons were a reproduction of the factory static compression. I like to rotate the motor after I install each piston and rod assembly to measure ring drag. With all the pistons installed, it was time for new head gaskets and the 291 rec port cylinder heads. Prior to assembly, we made sure to check crank thrust. Check out our little setup here. We've got our dial indicator measuring the crank thrust. This one had only about 3.5 thousandths, so we had to sand the thrust bearing a little bit to get a little bit more. The high-performance rec port big valve closed chamber heads were freshly machined by Bostic Racing. The high-performance 291 casting numbers, the last 3 digits, can be found on the bottom side of the cylinder head underneath the intake ports. Note our high-performance rec port heads also featured provisions for guide plates and screw-in rocker studs for an adjustable valve train. Machine work to the cylinder heads featured a light surfacing, valve job, and a fresh set of valves. Unfortunately, the only cylinder heads we had at our disposal were these 1017-1s, which were actually designed for a much bigger bore. These will be replaced by the right head gaskets. We've got the head on now. We're putting the rocker studs and guide plates on. Take a look. Got Teflon sealer because some of these go into the intake port. A couple of them do, a couple of them don't. We'll tighten all those down. We've got adjustable guide plates so that we can adjust the position on the rocker. Let's get it going. With the heads on, it was time to install the camshaft. Unfortunately, I didn't have a reproduction of the factory cam yet, so I chose one from Comp Cams. The cam was installed into the awaiting big block. The Comp Cam was teamed with this double roller Magnum timing set. Though adjustable, the timing set was installed straight up. Before I install the lifters, put a Moly-based assembly lube on the bottom and then also on the camshaft. You know, it helps to break in. Then we'll oil the sides. Pop them in the lifter holes. Got all the lifters in. Now I'll go ahead and put oil on top of each lifter. Slide the push rods in, and then start adjusting the guide plates. Here I've got a set of roller tip rockers in place along with the new push rods. Now it's time to adjust the valves. I set the cold lash at 20 and 22. Okay, we've got our oil pump and the pickup. Got that mocked up. What we're going to do is check the pan and see what the depth is between this and the inside of the pan. So we'll put some clay on there, put the pan on, see what our depth is. Make sure that this isn't touching the bottom of the pan or that's not too far away from the pan. So let's mock it up and check, and then we'll tack this baby into place once we have it in the right position. If we had the height we wanted, just tack it in place so it doesn't come out. Should be good. Okay, before we install the pump, make sure to fill it full of assembly lube. We did that, spin it, we spun it with our shaft. Get the gears all coated so that when we go to prime this thing when we're on the dyno, it primes right up. Now that the pan's on, change out the canister with our adapter for a screw-on filter. The intake gasket on. Now we'll mock up the intake manifold and see how much room we have for the China ram. Ready for the dyno. Yeah, getting ready to fire up. I was very excited that I finally got the L78 all together and up on the dyno. Unfortunately, it did not go as planned. We did manage to run through a break-in cycle, but we ran into a little bit of a problem. Check it out, you can actually see the water running up from underneath the valve spring under the seat. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it's going to have to be fixed. I'm sure this is exactly what we want to have happen. This, look at that one's just pouring out. This one? No, this one right here. So it's time to talk very quickly about our L78, the 375 hours, 396. Unfortunately, it didn't work out exactly as planned, but that happens. At least I spent the time and effort and several days to get the thing like all assembled and ready to test, and everything was done basically. There are, however, a few changes that I'm going to make before we run it again. Ideally, what I wanted to do is run this thing all stock. I have a set of stock, at least big block exhaust manifolds. I'm getting the 780 vacuum secondary Holley that we can run it with. We were going to run it. We had a 750 Brawler carburetor. I also had an 850. I've got a couple of carburetors that we wanted to try, but I'd like to run it with a factory carburetor. I'm also going to replace the camshaft that I tried. I do want to run that comp cam, but I also now from Elgin have a reproduction, an exact duplicate of the original factory cam that I'm going to run that as well. And I'm going to get some other ARP stuff from there, from those guys, so I can get the thing assembled, when it's kind of in its final form. Also, those roller tip rockers, we're going to put the stock rockers back on. So it comes out like basically as 100% factory stock motor, and we can run it and then find out what headers do versus stock exhaust manifolds, and then we could try the roller tips or other cams or those kind of things, but only after we get basically the stock motor done and know exactly what a stock 375 horse 396 really made. I'm Rich Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. That motor will be coming up.